Welcome to the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast.
Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to a new episode of the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast. With me today is Michael Wang, co-CEO of iSpire Technology. Thank you very much for joining me today, Michael.
David, thank you for having me.
Before we get started, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach me at david@cannabisequipmentnews.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also subscribe to our daily newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first. Michael, I always like to start with the origin story. So what was it that brought you to cannabis?
It was really a long journey for me. I started to pay attention to the gentleman Rick Simpson, as we all know, almost the pioneer in this space, nearly 20 years ago. His story really intrigued me. So I, by nature, David, I always practice herb as medicine. So all my life I paid very much attention to health through good diet, food being medicine, right? Nature being medicine, and so on. So his story really got me really curious about the plant. So I studied more, and by about 2008, 2010, I was really into it. And I personally, of course, benefited from using cannabis during the medical period. And it further enhanced my belief in the magic power of the plant. So that was really the beginning. And I finally, in 2018, when we sold our prior e-commerce company, I jumped with both feet into the cannabis space. I joined a company called Sunday Goods, based in Arizona and California, two-state operator. Basically, the whole thing started right there, 2018. I never turned back.
What was it about Rick Simpson's story that, was there anything specific about his story that really stood out to you?
Yeah, on one hand, David, certainly it's the fact that he could, let's say, cure a certain number of people's illnesses simply based on how well he understood the plant and how well he understood the human body and how the receptor and the plant would actually work together. That was one thing that really was intriguing. But I think, David, what really landed me behind him was the fact that he was viewed as a criminal by the Canadian government. I think that was really the turning point for me. I felt obligated to supporting him on that difficult journey for him.
How did you benefit medically?
Over the course of my life, pain was never a rare thing for me. So I never really liked using pain medicine like ibuprofen or Advil sort of things. So I always lean toward a natural way. So as you know, cannabis just fundamentally made my life much easier. And as I got older, my ability to have a solid sleep through the night became more challenging. And certainly, cannabis helped me tremendously, give me the quality of life, essentially from quality of sleep, right?
Right. Oh, no, I understand. Quality of life starts with quality of sleep, certainly. So after you sell the e-commerce company, how does the groundswell begin for iSpire?
So how iSpire came about, David, was when I was co-CEO of the cannabis company. We launched our vape line, and I wasn't happy. And not just me, my whole team was not happy with the vaping hardware available out there. no matter which hardware, whose hardware we tried, it always gave us a burning sensation. Generally speaking, the hardware available out there was all overheating. Back in the early days for cannabis vaping, when we were using distillate oil, that sort of hardware actually worked fine to some degree. But as we switched over to live resin, you remember 5-6 years ago, and the requirement for vaping hardware became far more complex and sophisticated. And depending on the formulation, obviously you want much lower temperature for the vape, and you want to preserve the flavor the oil has to offer. But when you heat the oil to 430 to 470 degree Fahrenheit, you can just imagine it just burns the most precious ingredients in the oil, cannabinoids included, terpenes, of course. So we were looking for that solution, and we couldn't find any. Finally, somebody said, if you really want to solve your problem, you may have to talk to the godfather of e-cigarette. David, it wasn't a joke. That gentleman's nickname is a godfather of e-cigarette because back in 2006, 2009 time period, he invented the world's first commercially available e-cigarette. So I spoke to him, and sure enough, 6 weeks later, he came back with a technology and a device that just blew our mind. We tried it. It was so smooth, so flavorful. Essentially, it preserved all the flavors the cannabinoids and the terpenes had to offer. So from there, we got to know each other better and better, and we decided to combine our skill set, my cannabis and operating background with his technology innovation background. And that was the beginning of iSpire. Essentially, they were just over 3 years ago.
Who is the godfather of the e-cigarette?
His name is Tony Liu. That's Liu. Yeah, he invented a brand called Aspire, Aspire. It was the world's first commercially available e-cigarette. It was first introduced to North America consumers back in 2009. And all the way until Juul came to the e-cig scene, Aspire was number one by market share globally. But obviously, Juul fundamentally shifted the whole industry in a different direction.
Did you and Tony align ideologically, or did you have to figure out how the relationship was going to work in order to make iSpire a success?
David, that's a great point. So often, as you know, two partners building a company together, they may not be fully aligned. In our case, it was like marriage made in heaven. We both leverage what we are good at, right? And we lean on the other person for what we are not good at. And he is a technology visionary. And just to share an example with you, David, current day, you go grab any e-cigarette or cannabis vaping device. They all share one design theme. That is, the heating coil and the, let's say, the chimney or the core where the airflow goes from bottom to the top to the mouthpiece. That basic concept it wasn't there until Tony introduced it. Before that, the coils were all placed horizontally. And oil would be wicked onto the coil and then heated up, becoming vapor. So he decided to make a device that's more compact and also offer better airflow and more efficient vaporization process. So he turned everything around to create the bottom vertical coil. it became industry standard. So that's a prime example of the kind of ideas and innovation the guy would come up with, right? So he is, as you know, in any industry, no matter how smart you are, it takes the accumulation of real business or life experience to be good at something. And that's what he developed. Along the way, in the last 15, 16 years, he just continued to refine the vaporization technology. And as a result, the whole industry followed him and benefited from it. And so he is superbly great there. On the other hand, David, most of my professional career was spent in the United States and developing, building, growing companies in the course of the last 30 years, from running a division of a large company like Honeywell to several startups that I helped to scale to multi-hundreds of millions of dollars in size. And so my leadership management experience there, combined with my few years of hands-on cannabis experience, really complement Tony's technology know-how. So we divided our responsibilities while I lead the team, drive the team, manage the team. He focused on creating new technology. And I will share a couple of the recent innovations with you as we go through the.
Yeah. So what's new in vaping technology?
Oh, yeah, David, we launched our original first generation technology that we call dual core back at the end of 2020. And we officially launched our first product for the cannabis industry in February 2021. So exactly 3 years ago. And that, like I just described, offered a lower heating temperature and better airflow. And also that technology solved a big deal of the leaky device challenge facing the industry. As you know, whether it's e-cigarette or cannabis vaping, especially cannabis vaping, because the oil, as you know, right, when it heats up, it's so liquid. Sometimes devices couldn't handle it properly. That's why you see 5 to 10% leakage rate in the industry. So we solved a big part of the leaky issue. That was the first generation. And last year, 2023, David, we launched a new technology called iSpire One technology. iSpire One is very simple. It's designed with operators' day-to-day life in mind. You know the space well. Typical operator functions this way. They would order the vaping hardware from a factory or somewhere, right? The hardware typically comes in two pieces. The body of the hardware, where the oil tank reside, and the PC board, the battery, majority of the items will be in one part. When the operators receive the hardware, they would fill the tank with their oil, either manually or semi-automatically, or in rare cases, fully automatically. But after they fill the tank, what they do is they need to rather quickly, within generally 5 to 10 minutes, take the mouthpiece and put the mouthpiece on the tank and then pressure it down to seal it. There is typically a locking mechanism where you hear a click. Generally, it's locked in place and the tank is sealed. It's important for the tank to be sealed so that the inside pressure and the outside pressure do not get to equal, because as you can imagine, if the pressure is inside equals outside, then gravity will take control of the device, right? Oil will naturally, by gravity, leak out of the device. That's why the devices need to be kept rather quickly. So you create a bit of a vacuum inside the tank and making oil in that process suspend itself in the tank. So you can keep the oil there. But by and large, David, no matter how efficient, how great, how skilled operators you have, they can never do a perfect job. When they cap it, they think click, oh, it's capped. Often it's not the case because there are 2 to 3, let's say, locking fingers in there. When you hear a click, you may just hear one getting locking in place, or maybe two. There is going to be a probability where it's not fully in place. And that's a big challenge facing the industry. By and large, the brands lose about 10 percentage points in gross margin because of leaky devices. And not only that, David, as you can imagine, the two-step operation, filling, capping, is labor intensive in nature. So what we did was we designed a so-called self-sealing technology. With our design, this is the first in the industry, whereas the mouthpiece is an integral part of the whole body, it's built together. Then we offer the operators a filling machine. So basically, you buy our devices, we typically either give you a filling machine for free or lease the machine to you. And using the machine, David, the device will be filled automatically in one shot. And the device is already pre-sealed and pressure tested in the factory. So there is no way oil will ever leak out of the device. So you reduce labor costs, you eliminate leaking. This fundamentally changes how the industry practice, how the industry works, right? So that's, again, David, it's not us sitting in a dark room, just randomly coming up with technology. We always think about the pinpoints facing the brands, operators. And this is a perfect example of our solution. And the latest, David, this year, 2024, very soon, we will likely launch a so-called point of use age gating technology. That's another example, David, of how mindful we are about the industry and how we develop our technology to address real issues for consumers, for brands, and in this case, really for the protection of minors. By me saying point of use age gating technology. Once again, this is a leading edge. So far, no one has such technology. We started developing it with our other partners a couple months back, and I think we are going to have a product that will be ready to roll in a couple months, and we plan on using that technology for our own e-cigarette PMTA applications in the US.
How does age gating work? How can it tell if an underage person is using the vape?
Yeah, this is really, David, you hit the question on the head. This is something, obviously, as you know, parents as well as FDA have been most worried about, right? As we all know, FDA really wants to protect the minors. Juul obviously didn't do a good job with that, so causing a lot of minors, young people, prematurely use e-cigarette, especially flavored e-cigarette. So Point of use is essentially, David, works this way without revealing every single piece of the technology. You get the device. We have a chip embedded in the device. The chip will activate the device or turn the device off. So when you buy the device that we make, suppose we get the PMTA sign off on that. We think we will, because this is the most, I would say, comprehensive solution that the FDA will see so far. So you get the device, you need to go through a couple rather quick steps. And the device will have near field communication capabilities on one hand. It also has a Bluetooth built in. So there is a native app that will automatically pop up on your phone when you place your phone near the device. Or if you choose so, you can download the app onto the phone, and you will be required to verify your ID through your driver's license, and you will be required to verify your actual face. So the system would match the ID card with the face. It's basically less than a minute process. And then from there, you can use the device. The device is powered on, and each time you use it, you need to go through a very quick, almost just like you would log into, use your password to log into any other system. A very quick visual, hold up the phone, and within 10 seconds, it's verified it's you. You can use the device.
So with the original designs, when Tony had kind of rewritten how a vape is made, how were you able to find market adoption? And, basically, just because we hear a lot of stories of people that build a better mousetrap, but that mousetrap never sees the market. So how were you able to get market penetration with that? And do you think you'll see the same success with this new age gating?
Yes, David, you're right. In inventing technology, the bottom line is your point is spot on. If you don't really create value added to your audience, to your customers, no matter how great a mousetrap you have, you won't find a buyer, right? So our team, David, certainly leveraged on Tony's inventions, but more importantly, David, where our team differentiate from most of the players in the space is that we have a team of almost 70 people in Southern California. Nearly everybody had extensive cannabis experience, and everybody had a large and deep network of people we worked with in the cannabis space. So we are deeply plugged in. So from that point of view, we know what's going on, in the industry, where the industry is headed. We know what kind of oil is coming, characteristics of the oil. And so that's how we stay ahead. We are almost inventing new mousetrap at the pace, in some cases, even a step ahead of the overall market, so that we are there when they need the solution. And we are not, from that point of view, we are not just copying other people or following other people. And to a degree, David, that's why we were able to grow our business so fast. Like I said, 3 years ago, we started selling to the cannabis space. And within the second fiscal year, we did $40 million in hardware sales. This fiscal year, we will grow tremendously again. So it was because we always have our customers' needs in mind. And it's not just about a mousetrap, right? It's how do we really add value? And our team of cannabis experienced experts certainly helped a lot. This way, David, we are not just competing on price, we are competing on solution and value add.
To that point, do you think consumers will buy into the age gating technology, or do you think it'll take a regulatory action to push that issue forward?
Great point there. If it's up to just consumers alone, I think it will be slow moving. It certainly will take FDA, certainly will take regulatory action. As you know, so far, there isn't such action. I think by and large, David, as you know, FDA in the last few years has made it very clear e-juices could only be or only stay true to the tobacco flavor, right? They didn't allow fruit flavor. They didn't allow a variety for good reason, because that's exactly how Juul got kids hooked. So FDA is trying to get away from that. However, the reason FDA said stick to tobacco flavor is in a way it's not the perfect solution. That's the best solution we could have to discourage minors from getting their hands on the device. But truthfully, I think FDA would certainly love age gating technology. That will be the sure way to prevent minors from using this device. Now, there is obviously an important point I want to make here. I think from FDA point of view, if you do have age gating technology at a point of use, then they will feel far more comfortable with you offering other flavors, right? Banana flavors, pineapple flavors, because then they know the users will be true adults. When only adults could use e-cigarette, FDA for certain will relax on the flavor side. So to answer your question, David, I think there is a bit of a, let's say, inconvenience in using the age-gated devices, but when you suddenly have more availability in flavor, I think that will offset that a bit of inconvenience.
Okay. So you see age gating not just for cannabis vaping devices, but for the entire e-cigarette space.
Yes. Yeah, and we will use this technology to apply for our own PMTA for our e-cigarette for the US market.
Okay. I've always liked the concept of biometric identity being associated with otherwise hazardous products. We've seen applications in the firearm industry, but there's been incredible pushback when it comes to that. Are you essentially kind of gearing up for a fight for people that might think biometric identity platforms might be a bridge too far in terms of privacy?
That's interesting balancing act for sure. You are totally right. There is a consumer protection. There is privacy protection. The two certainly could go hand in hand. In most cases, I think they are against each other. However, with our, I'm glad you brought that up. With our technology, we use blockchain technology. In a way, through the blockchain technology, we actually make our system, of course, it will never be hacker proof, right? We make it very, very difficult to impossible to hack. Therefore, the consumer information will be protected. So that's I'm glad you brought this topic up. That's why, David, we picked the blockchain technology, not conventional technology, because conventional technology not only is consumer information residing somewhere that can be hacked, even the user themselves could potentially hack the device, right? As you know, young people today could do that with ease. So that's why we use blockchain. There is no way they can hack it.
Okay. I also like the idea of the application being used for geofencing. So that way, around schools, stuff like that. Maybe this is the idea that you'd put these geofences around schools and other establishments that have underage kids and like essentially disable the device in the area.
Yep. Yes. That's a key with Bluetooth communication. So essentially, the Bluetooth will have to communicate with the phone. The phone, like you said, will be geofenced, right? So in a school area, maybe even in certain public buildings when they don't allow smoking or vaping, on the airplane, that's prime example too.
How do I do that in my house so that when no one's vaping in my house? No.
Your family will have to do that for you.
Do you think, do you think that regulators will buy into the technology?
Yes, David, absolutely. Without some sort of age gating technology, we can never really solve the issue that we face today with minors getting their hands on cigarette, right? On e-cigarette. Any method of, let's say, point of sales, age verification, you and I both know it just doesn't work. Adults could buy anything for kids if they are not responsible. So point of use is the only ultimate long-term solution.
So when it came to biometrics in the firearm industry, there was great opposition that came from the NRA. Does the vape industry have a similar industry group or lobbying efforts that would likely fight against this sort of biometric capabilities in vaping?
I think it's hard to predict. However, David, let's just say in the last 5-6 years, the vape industry went through a couple, I would say, rather disheartening experiences, right? You remember back in 2019, fall of 2019, the vape crisis. And certainly that gave more of a reason for FDA to regulate the industry, really to protect consumers. Granted, I think everybody views the regulators, such as FDA, differently. But ultimately, FDA is here to help protecting consumers. You can imagine the vape industry is the e-cig industry. If there is no standard, it's really Wild West that we have seen. You never know what oil goes into the device, and you never know what kind of a material like metal and plastic that goes into the device. I personally studied a lot of our competitors' hardware. I'm truly concerned about the hardware used by some people, some brands, and certainly produced by some factories. And in the interest of driving down cost, often they would use, David, I would pick one example. They would use a so-called nickel plated brass. So essentially, they right? They deposit a thin layer of nickel on the brass. Brass is cheap versus stainless steel. So the device will, the chimney, the device looks shiny as if it's of high quality. But the reality is, David, you put the cannabis oil and the terpenes in there, within no time, that nickel will be dissolved and will be sitting in the oil. That's absolutely detrimental to consumers' health. And yet, some people do that and produce it, some people use it. So from that point of view, I see firsthand why we need regulation to protect consumers. But you're right, there will be players in the industry who would push back. But we know we need to stay ahead of the curve rather than being forced. So from day one, David, all of our vaping hardware has been made with stainless steel. Where there is oil only touches stainless steel and glass. And in some cases, depending on the oil used, we use a food grade plastic. But again, food grade, and we do heavy metal testing. And for example, we use a variety of oil to test our device. 100% terpenes, you could imagine that's the most corrosive, right? Of all oil. 100% terpenes to 50% to 10%, we would soak the device in such oil, and we will test for heavy metal in 30 days, 90 days, 180 days, 360 days. They all come out clean, no heavy metal. And if you test questionable hardware, David, you will see heavy metal over time in the oil. So from that point of view, we never compromised. Even if it would make the product cost more, we stick to stainless steel. We never use brass. We never use any nickel plated anything. But we are only one company. We can only uphold our own standard. I feel the industry could benefit from a certain regulation so that consumers would have more certainty that they put the device in their mouth, they will be safe to use. Not only from hardware point of view, certainly from oil point of view too. As you know, there are questionable operators out there who would do everything to lower the cost and essentially at the risk of causing harm to consumers.
How do we educate consumers on the importance of buying a higher quality hardware, especially in an industry when a lot of people are buying on price?
Yeah, it's a tough one, David. As you know, if we look at the two industry, cannabis industry, because there's no federal level regulation, right? The states are really upholding safety standard. And the cannabis industry, relatively speaking, is still in its infancy state. I think especially with some states legalizing cannabis recently, they didn't have enough experience, both from regulation point of view and from fundamentally from product testing point of view. There is not a shared standard for safety requirement, even in the test labs. So I will never forget years ago when we were doing our cannabis hardware and oil test, we would put the oil in our devices, same oil in a few devices. We would send to different labs. The results are night and day. They come back like crazy. It's an indication of how unreliable testing system currently is as well. So I think as the industry matures, on the other hand, David, in this process, you are totally right. It's hard for consumers to judge what is good, what is bad, what's safer, what's not, right? In the cannabis industry. I think it's just part of the process until federal legalization, until FDA starts to get involved in creating a nationwide standard for safety. It's going to be challenging. But e-cigarette side, I think, is a few years ahead for cannabis in terms of maturity. Even there, as you know, currently, I think on the market, at a minimum, 80% of the e-cigarette devices are sold illegally, meaning they didn't get PMTA approval. But I think over time, more and more products will get approved by FDA, especially with age verification, age gating technology. I think more devices will be available. Consumers would have more confidence in buying. Oh, this is a PMTA or FDA approved. Okay, then it must be safe. Except it couldn't solve the minor using the device problem, right? Yeah.
Right. You had mentioned some of your specific hardware concerns. Is anything else top of mind in terms of some of the hardware that's currently on the market where you kind of shake your head in terms of what's going on regarding the design?
Yeah, absolutely. You are right. Consumers, because of lack of general knowledge about everything, they tend to lean in the direction for judging product by price, right? So unfortunately, that put pressure on the brands, that put pricing pressure on the suppliers like us. So it happens all the time. I hold a device, I can tell immediately whether it's coated, nickel coated. That's one thing I look at. The other thing is what kind of plastic they use. If it's not food grade over time, terpenes will erode the material and the material get into the oil. As you know, e-cigarette devices generally don't contain oils with real corrosive compounds. But cannabis is a whole different animal. We did a testing of devices before with the e-cigarette juices. You could actually use nickel-plated device for a couple of weeks before it starts showing traces of heavy metal. But with the cannabis oil, especially current day, as you know, live resin is popular now, even live rosin, and that's as corrosive as anything gets. So it can, it will destroy, low grade plastic. It would destroy nickel-plated anything. Those are things. And certainly, David, when I hold, say, ceramic cards, I judge the ceramic part as well. Because as you know, if a ceramic is not put together the right way, it could, over time, after so many heat cycles, ceramic is brittle. So after so many heat cycles, sometimes it can start to fall, the so-called ceramic powder, right? Debris would fall. And often, if the powder does fall, where does it go? It goes into the oil. So that's why I judge the plastic material they use, whether they use stainless steel, and the quality of a ceramic they use. When ceramic is manufactured the right way, it can last safely throughout the product cycle. But there are questionable players whose only goal is to reduce costs. They would take shortcut.
So for the material going into the vape, you need like a certificate of analysis showing that it's been tested and what's essentially in the consumable product. Is there an equivalent to almost a certificate of analysis for the actual hardware, so that way people know kind of what it's made of?
Yes, David, there is. For cannabis industry, there isn't such requirement, obviously. For e-cigarette to go through the FDA's PMTA review process, you have to provide such data. You have to provide such data, and you have to provide extensive hardware test data. There is a long list of requirement on the hardware side, in addition to on the liquid side.
Okay. So you're clearly a very forward-thinking and innovative company. What's on your radar in terms of the next great frontier when it comes to vaping technology?
I think vaping technology, David, should be designed for, let's say, a large-scale operation. As you know, it's just matter for when, not if, the cannabis industry become federally legal. When that day happens, big players will come in, right? There will be, I would say, industry-wide consolidation. Small players will gradually be absorbed by large players. Right now, I would say nationwide, there are close to 10,000 brands across all the states. In most states, there are hundreds, if not thousands, brands. But we all know, as the industry matures, as especially federal legalization happens, immediately there will be consolidation across the industry. When the consolidation happens, I think it will, at some point, I think in relatively short time future ahead, maybe 100 brands will control the whole cannabis industry nationwide. And maybe 10 years out, only 20, 30 brands would control the whole market, right? Of course, that's way after federal legalization. So the whole industry will move in the direction of a typical CPG space. So from that point of view, David, consumer education will be at higher level for sure. Safety will be at higher level, but more importantly, operation side will be at a higher level. It will be matching the current high volume CPG industry. So when that day comes, the whole way of operating will be changed. Right now, it's largely mom and pop, and consequently, hardware is designed that way. Consequently, machinery is designed that way. But when that becomes a consolidated industry, it will be high volume, continued operation, right? Assembly line operation. So we have to think ahead for that as well. How the hardware will be different, how the production will be different, how we can help with that whole thing, not just hardware. By us introducing Ispire 1, David, along with the filling machine, it's a step in that direction. But we are, of course, only at top of first inning of this game. The industry will go through several iterations of modernization, automation, and so on and so forth. We have to stay ahead of that.
Are you encouraged by the current state of the industry and its trajectory?
I think I'm encouraged by the fact that more and more states are legalizing cannabis. Certainly for the cannabis industry, for the advocates, such as myself, is very encouraging to see. But it's also discouraging to see how this very beneficial medicine. The plant is often being held hostage by the political system, right? So that's something we have to live with. That's something we have to collectively push and drive and campaign for. I think, as you know, you may even know more latest information than I. By and large, nearly 70% American adults are for legalization at federal level. So I think that's telling. If we don't get cannabis descheduled or rescheduled somehow before this election cycle, I think it will be very disappointing.
No, I certainly agree with you there. And I really do appreciate you taking your time, Michael. It's been really enlightening and encouraging on my end. Before we get out of here, is there anything else that you want to make sure the Cannabis Equipment News audience either knows about yourself or your work at iSpire Technology?
I think, David, those of us who are in this industry, for certain, have our mission and purpose, right? I think we are all very passionate about the plant. We just need to spread such knowledge, and we need to really help the industry become legitimate. We do need to all campaign and speak to our representatives to make this a broader, I would say, wellness issue rather than the traditional legacy, quote unquote, drug issue.
Completely agree with you there as well, Michael. Thank you again for taking the time. It truly has been a pleasure.
And thank you, David, for having me.
Before we get out of here, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. Even a simple thumbs up on YouTube will help us out a lot. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach me at david@cannabisequipmentnews.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also subscribe to our daily newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first. For Michael Wang, co-CEO of iSpire Technology, I'm David Manti. This is the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast, and we'll see you next week.